Thou shalt not eat. Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We're here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience and both partnered in solo dancing. She has about 22 years and I have about 24. So tonight we are finishing our bookend of Robert Royston and Laureen Baldovi for When the Open Should Have Been. So part two.
Part two, because we only got through half of it. To the screen share. When last we left off, we were about halfway through the routine and coming out of this double dip sequence.
Yes.
So one of the things we were talking about a lot last week was the concept of escalating a choreography from the beginning to the end. So you're always moving towards bigger, better, more complicated, taking up more space, having more energy. So that way the beginning of the dance needs to have less energy. You take up less space. So that way you have somewhere to go. So now that we're in part two, the energy is already wrapped up significantly, and we're starting to see the effects of a lot of escalation in this choreography.
Yep.
Which oftentimes for a follow means more and more and more spinning.
This is true. And like faster spinning.
All the spins.
Which, that's a large part of this dance. So,
yep.
It makes sense. You don't like spinning, why are you here?
True story. I've heard some leaders who like to learn how to follow say they do it because I get to spin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can spin as a leader too,
Yeah, this is true. I mean, it is the same idea.
Another thing we were talking about last week is how each kind of progressive section of the choreography calls back to a previous section. And so we find a lot of moments that feel like moments that have come before, but are escalated in a certain way. So this moment where they're both looking to the audience is a callback to former parts of the choreography where they've looked at the audience.
Can we go back? Yeah, for a hot second to the barrel roll.
Sure.
The reason I wanted to go back is because barrel rolls, we've kind of talked about them a little bit before, but they're something that needs to be really precise when you do them, specifically because of the fact that you're both rotating at the same time. And so the hand needs to come over the head at the same time, and the hands need to stay in the middle or a little bit more towards the follow. If not, it will end poorly. Most likely, it will end in a breakaway. Like you'll end up not with each other's hands.
Or if the leader has a vice grip on your hand, you'll end up with a permanently partially dislocated shoulder, like myself.
That could also happen.
It's not fun.
No, it's not.
Yeah, you can see really how much Robert is really making sure the hand is towards Laureen. So not only is he extending his arm, but he's extending his back. And so there are lots of ways to create that space for the follow that isn't simply shoulder mobility. There is more than one way to do that.
Yeah. You really want to make sure that the spacing is good between you two. Like, you don't want necessarily to be like rolling off each other's shoulders. Like, you don't want contact, really.
Right.
Like you do with other types of turns for follows.
Right.
The idea with the contact is that you kind of bounce away or roll off away. And that's not what you want here. You want to stay in the same places, mostly. Obviously, you'll travel a little bit side to side, but you want to try and stay in the same place for the most part. And you can see that they're not taking large steps here either. Their feet are pretty close together.
Yeah. I love this moment because the last time they had a sharp look towards the audience, Robert had more emphasis in the
Hmm.
choreography, but this time I feel like Laureen is
Yeah.
getting the spotlight on her. And it's a really
Yeah.
great kind of equal and opposite balanced
Hmm.
piece of choreography right there.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason that it looks like Laureen is a little bit more spotlighted in this moment is because she has a pop of the leg along with the swoop of the hair around her.
Hmm.
So there's just, and the like tail of her dress, the tail of her
Yeah.
dress. You know what I mean. It all kind of
Costume
swoops
choreo.
around. Yeah. And everything just kind of finishes moving a little bit separately. And with Royston, everything kind of stops all at once.
Hmm.
So it draws the eye more towards Laureen.
Yep. Oh, I want to talk about that behind the back.
Yes, go for it.
So, this is like a really fun way to simply add a variation to a pattern at the anchor, right? But
Hmm.
what's lovely about the way they're dancing it is Robert is not interrupting Laureen's momentum.
Yeah.
So she's not suddenly getting like a comma in the middle of the compound sentence where she's stopping, going, and then
Mhm.
scrolling away. It has a little bit more flow to that. So one of the ways Robert is accomplishing that is with his left foot right here. So he's not only crossing back into the slot, so he'll be in front of her, but he's actually traveling towards her a little bit. So that way he can move in the same direction as her, which is allowing her momentum to continue. All right, this is a small but incredibly crucial detail. Notice how they've got a right to right handshake handhold. But as soon as Laureen starts pivoting, you can see that Royston opens up his hand. He is no longer gripping his fingers all the way around her wrist.
Mhm.
And then they're switching to a wrist to wrist connection. It's really hard to tell because of the motion blur, but you can see his fingers are open here
Yeah.
and they're connected across his wrist.
Hmm. Yeah. So in that, his kind of connection, he's kind of pressing up and out,
Hmm.
but not a lot. It's just enough so that
Yeah.
there is still connection there.
Yeah.
And Laureen is going to be kind of pressing a little bit down, very, very, very lightly.
Yeah. Just ever so slightly resisting
Hmm.
Robert's motion. So that way
Right.
they can stay connected.
Hmm. She's basically, the way to think about it is she's wanting to keep the connection, but still allow him to move her.
Hmm. And I love this counterbalanced anchor pose right here.
Yeah, that's
It's so
nice.
great. This is where center counterpoint is really crucial. They're both balancing out the connection on either side with their hip weight.
Hmm.
And because it's so counterbalanced, they can then syncopate and move this counterbalanced partnership down the slot together with hitch steps.
Hmm. Yeah, and Laureen's emphasis is really on the lines that she's making with the legs,
Hmm.
because as she's taking those steps forward, she does have to bend the knees, but then she's making sure that she's making sure to really straighten the legs in order to settle the hips back.
Hmm. All right. I could probably spend the whole hour on the transition from this never ending hitch step to the one afterwards. Give me a second. I'll just find a small point. So, the main thing is Robert is starting to travel more. And you can see how once his right foot right here takes a nice big step back, his center just continues moving at a steady rate through that foot. It doesn't slow down once it's over top of that foot.
Yeah.
And then the other detail, if you watch the handhold, Robert's palm is like facing us in the camera right now, and he rotates it down ever so slightly. So if his thumb were pointed straight away from his hand, his thumb would be pointed at us. And the really important detail is noticing that Laureen's thumb is pointed towards the ceiling. If a follow's thumb is ever rotated so it's pointed out away from their body at all, you've rotated it too far and it's no longer ergonomical and they need to disengage to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very subtle rotation, and it looks bigger simply because of where they're starting from.
Yeah. And I want to add, since you mentioned the over rotation with the hands, not all follows are experienced enough to know that there's a point that they need to release the connection in order to prevent injury and or whatever.
Right.
So just because you don't feel the follow, like, release the connection doesn't mean that the hand is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Because I know
You just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's a huge skill to learn as a follow. And so being aware as a leader whether or not your follow seems to have those defensive skills is really important. Because if I notice a follow that I'm leading doesn't have those kind of defensive skills, I bring down the complexity of what I'm doing to ensure their safety.
Yeah.
And then you also never know what kind of injury someone might have unless they're wearing like caution tape on their injury. You're not going to know.
Wasn't there a point where there was wristbands that said like go easy or something like that?
Yeah,
if you were injured.
Tessa Monroe sold those and I had one, but it just didn't take off, and I kind of wish it had, because I would have really appreciated that. All right, we harped on this like 5 million times in the last episode, but Robert's right forearm is not on Laureen's neck. It's on the top of her back, the base of her neck, not the actual gap between the back and the skull.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
If you want to hear us harp on it more, you can go back and watch the last episode.
Yep. Oh, I love these kinds of movements so much. It's like my favorite.
Like the ronde out.
Yes,
around.
that is the word that I wanted. I think the MRI took some of my English out of my brain.
It's kind of a mix between a ronde and a fan kick.
Yeah.
Fan kicks are when your leg comes like up and over. But because her leg doesn't really, or at least the foot doesn't really go too much above her hip height, I wouldn't necessarily consider it a fan kick, like a real fan kick. I would consider it a little bit more of like a ronde that didn't touch the floor.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk about, I'm going to use the term high dynamic range here.
Okay.
But I want to highlight how Robert is actually minimizing the range and elevation of the two hands for this to be comfortable for Laureen. Because one hand hold, the left to left, ends up going over her head, whereas the right to right one ends up going from her shoulder height down lower. And the detail I want to mention is that it's not going all the way up here and then all the way down here. I'm going to delete that so it makes sense. So this handhold stops down here and it maxes out a height about yay. And then the other handhold stops here and maxes out like just above her head. So this is the distance and elevation he's working with. And the one that is actually clearing her head has the higher dynamic range. Yeah. If the other hand, if the one that I have marked in green also had that same kind of dynamic range, it could have thrown her off her center for that rotation. So I want y'all to pay attention to this hand. It goes just high enough to comfortably release from her shoulder. It comes through across their belly buttons and then stays at her waist height. And that's what's making it nice and comfortable for her, instead of making it just as big of a range as the other handhold. That's something that I've experienced as a follow, where like both hands are doing all the work when they don't need to. And it's just confusing and it makes me want to fall over. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Also, this Robert face is fantabulous. I love it so much.
Get the lips involved, you know.
Blue steel. So, do not try this at home, ladies and gentlemen, and theys and thems.
You can do it, but it's just something that, because of the fact that it's going behind the lead's back, you can't make eye contact. It's really hard to communicate and do with somebody that you don't already have a solid connection with.
Yeah. So like a few of the things connection wise that are helping her know to start ducking is this handhold is staying low. So she literally has to crouch down to stay attached to that hand. And also the minor fact that an arm is coming towards her face. But like Alicia said, that's the kind of thing that you should do with someone who you've like practiced it with, right? But yeah, I would say that this is one of those patterns where leaders tend not to create enough space away from their bodies.
Correct. Yeah.
And like right here. See this position that Robert is putting himself into?
Yeah. Super
bonkers. Awkward. Bonkers. It would be more comfortable for her if he could hammerlock himself even more, so this handhold could come towards her a little bit more, because she's very much right now being split in two directions. But being able to create enough space for your follow is so important in those kinds of patterns. So like proceed with caution.
Yeah, that's the thing, that it's not so much when I've been led through it that it isn't led well. It's more so that I don't get enough space.
Yeah.
So not fun.
No.
Like technically, if you have a follow that you either know really well and have practice with, or it's a really high level follow and you know how to lead it well, go for it. But other than that, take precaution. Maybe think about it before you do it.
Yes. Oh my god, that's so fun. So again, choreography wise, we've just seen a lot of stuff happen. So now, god damn it, Zoom, go away, little box. So they've just done a lot of stuff. So now they need like a break in the choreography, both literally and figuratively. I apologize for my puns. But it's also like, as an audience, it's giving us a break.
I also want to mention that these, and the reason that they look super dramatic is because they're prepping it the other way first. We've talked about this type of thing before, where if you want something to look super dramatic, you prep it the other way first and then go into it. So you can see Robert's head is going to the right before it goes to the left, and Laureen's is going to the left before it goes to the right. And they're really accenting it with that whole body.
All right, I'll move forward. My brain got caught in a loop. And then they do the same thing again.
Yep.
But just passing each other.
Laureen doesn't do it quite as much this time, simply because of the position that the arms are coming over her
Yeah,
head. If she did it more dramatically, it would not end well.
right. Yeah, this is where a lot of the contrast is coming from Robert
Yeah.
changing which side of her he's on.
Mhm.
So she's not the one doing all the moving, he is.
Yeah.
Gonna say that again. She is not the one doing all of the moving, he is.
I get the feeling that you're not talking about that just in this context.
Ugh. I don't know. I feel like if I could put on like a filter, like a pair of rose-colored glasses onto every student who's learning how to lead, like a fun, fancy pattern that has high contrast like this, just for them to first things first realize which partner is doing the moving or doing most of the
Yes.
moving.
Yes.
Because I don't know, I have been yeeted many a times for no reason.
Same.
Thou shalt not eat.
I
Well, there's
think I
our
want to add. That's a new saying we have around here now.
yeah. I think that's gonna be the episode intro. Anyways, you were gonna say something probably so much smarter.
I was going to say, for our viewers that aren't like brand new to this dance, when you go to any type of group lesson, sometimes even like, like one-on-one lessons, but mainly group lessons, when you are learning a new pattern of some sort, pay attention to who's doing the majority of the movement, because a lot of times teachers won't necessarily mention that. Like, they will tell you the steps that you are supposed to do, but they don't tell you like, oh, I'm taking a larger step here so that I'm moving around my partner. That doesn't necessarily always happen. So when you're learning something new, try and keep that in mind when you are in a class.
Yeah, the spacing relationship between the leader and the follower at any given point of a West Coast swing pattern is so important.
Yep.
And yeah, my knees hurt just watching it.
You don't know how to do these ones.
But sometimes you do know how to do it, but your knees just hate existing.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's a
sad.
separate problem.
Also, if nobody has actually gone and like looked up Shorty George, like the original,
Yeah.
how
Shorty George
low
Royston's
to
boogie walks.
yeah, how low he gets to the floor is insane. That is all. So here's another example of Robert's doing most of the work. These kind of rides where the follow ends up kind of leaning forward. You can just see how much he is moving. So
Yeah.
his left foot taking stepping really close to her, and then his right foot, he's like really lunging into his left foot so he can get this huge step right here.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
is
then
super important for this in
yeah.
particular. I had this in one of my routines, and what will happen is you will kind of like trip your follow almost if you don't
Mm-hmm.
move enough as a lead.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes very awkward and not smooth.
Yep. Then if we back up a little farther. So the other thing that's really important is to wait until the follow has placed the foot they're going to turn on. So in this case, it's Laureen's left. Wow, my brain short circuited for a second. But that foot not only has to touch the ground,
Yeah.
but their center has to get over it.
Or at least mostly over it.
Yeah, before you start turning them. And you can see how expertly Robert is doing that. He's getting her most of the way weighted over that foot and then initiating the rotation.
Yeah. I would, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. We both have soapboxes here. Go for it.
I was just going to say that, like, at the very least, make sure that the follow is not split weight. Like,
yeah,
that's the most important thing, but ideally you want to make sure they're over fully that foot they're rotating on.
Yeah. A lot of leaders, when they're trying to learn this pattern, is they kind of blend these two items on the to-do list together. So from this moment, this frame, to this one, they tend to combine those as the same lead when they're not. The first lead, the first item on the to-do list that is a distinct item is to continue getting the follow moving over that foot. So she's rotating simply because she had already been rotating. She doesn't need additional leading to rotate through this moment. It's afterwards that you add the whabam to accelerate it.
Yeah.
It's so important. Those are two distinct things. Step one, step two. It is not step bleu.
Step bleu.
That's all I could come up with. I couldn't think of how to combine one and two in a funny way, so I just made a noise.
I mean, that worked, I guess.
I think it got my point across.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the benefits of both leading and following, but also just being a large person as a leader. I usually can apply force to leader dominant dancers who don't follow as much. Usually I can manhandle them through this pattern where they're following it, I'm leading it, so they get the point.
Yeah.
And it's like they come off a roller coaster and they're first kind of confused and then they're like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's what you gotta do. Woohoo. And now they're calling back to the hitch steps again.
Yep.
With that pose.
I want to look for a second at how awkward Robert's hand is when they come out of this little hitch.
All right. His right hand.
Yes.
Yes. Whamam! So that's interesting. See, I would probably choose to lead that differently personally, but I also don't know what his shoulder mobility is because that's actually my busted shoulder, so I can like open it like a revolving door and I wouldn't have to rotate the hands as much. But basically the amount of rotation that Laureen's right hand is getting, personally, I'm not a fan of that. I would disconnect from that. Would you?
Possibly. Depends, I think, if there's energy going anywhere else at the same time. But I also don't necessarily think that she's totally connected to that.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those things that's like choreography wise, you know what you need to do and your partner knows what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting out of a weird spot. So you make it look like like it's being led follow, but I think that she's allowing it to connect enough to bring that right hip forward, but then she's letting the rest of it move across her body without really being connected.
Yeah, you can see her right elbow like really gets in front of her rib cage.
Yeah, without her moving or rotating.
Yeah. And also in this pose, she's hitched, but she's forward weighted, which means she has less power to drive forward. So she's really just placing her right foot more or less underneath her or slightly out ahead of her. She can't really push forward. The super awkward thing is Robert is having to go this way for this next piece of the choreography. So he's not able to use a normal piece of contra body to prep that rotation for her. So that's probably where the hand rotation is coming from. Yeah. But then he remedies the awkwardness so quickly. Like as soon as, like even before his foot places to the ground, he's already righting the handhold, like unrotating it and drawing it forward and out ahead of him and her. So she's properly prepped on her too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of those things that like if you don't do routines, if you've never done a routine and you watch routines instead, You don't really know that there are sometimes certain spots that are very, very hard to lead and follow based on where you're at in the choreography. So there tends to be a second that is you both move on your own and you make it look connected. Doesn't happen super frequently. And generally, you will maybe only see it once or twice in a routine, and then the next time you see the routine, I'll be gone because they will have adjusted it to take it out. But that is something that occasionally you do have to do. So if you don't do routines, now you know.
Yeah. Here is another moment where it's not necessarily that Robert's doing most of the moving, they're sharing it. So you can see right here, they're both stepping down line in opposite directions in order to pass each other quickly. It's not 100% responsibility of Laureen. Robert is sharing that.
Little mess up here, but that's okay. They got right back into it.
Very minor.
That's one of those things that, like, if you play it off well enough, generally people aren't going to notice it and they won't remember it at all.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting shape that Laureen has for this 1 foot. It's a very wide position to kind of go into it in terms of where she has her arm and her leg. Generally, if you see a leg that's out that far, the arm will be in a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure if there was a reasoning behind her like really dropping the forearm down, or if that's just something she kind of naturally did. But generally, you'll see where the lower arm extends from elbow. Generally, it will be in rather than kind of extended and dropped.
I love how the leg shape like accents her dress and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those little details that can be great for costuming in choreography. It's like, how can your costume facilitate the shapes you're already making, or vice versa?
Yeah.
Like I remember I did a couple of West Coast swing first wedding dance choreographies for a few couples back in the day. I don't know why someone would want to learn West Coast swing and a choreography for their first dance. That just sounds too stressful for me. But they were throwing money in my face, so I'm not complaining. I cried each time, and they made fun of me. It was great. But I remember telling my brides, like, you want a practice skirt that is going to be the length and weight and width of your actual dress to practice in. Because that affects things.
Yes, it does. Yeah, when you do routines and you have a very complicated outfit or something that kind of gets in the way, it's really important to make sure you know how to work with it. And actually, I would even say that just for like social dancing purposes, if you're wearing something that's a little different than normal, make sure you know how to work with that.
I know.
So you don't put your partner in an awkward place.
Oh God, remember there was like this period of time where the kind of baggy Batwing shirts were like so popular. And as a leader, you'd want to like,
what I thought of.
You want to get in there for your close position, but no, there's a shirt in the way. And then there was also a period of time where like there just wouldn't be shirt, like the armpit scoop would just go all the way down to the waist. And you'd like sneak in there for close position, but then you'd get into the shirt through you did not intend to get into their shirt, but just because of physics and the
just happens.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not much of a thing anymore for the most part. Now for this death-defying stunt.
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
So this is something for Laureen. It looks like she's doing something different than is actually happening to an extent with the upper body. So you can see with her right hand, she's kind of grabbing on to him. At the same time, she's wrapping that left arm around herself. Right. So she's not just kind of leaving it where it is. She's really tucking it across her body.
Yeah, because for coming out of this, she needs to be able to be in front of Robert.
Yep.
And if her arm were out to the side behind him, that would probably impede that.
But also because of the like arm styling that she does here, it makes it more dramatic looking because she's bringing it out and across. So it kind of looks like you can't really see where the arm is coming from until she's really swinging it out, which makes it look really dramatic.
Yeah. So it's hard to tell because of his black clothing, but she is against his waist and also on his thigh, right? That's what you're seeing too.
Yeah.
So she's not out in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of side body contact for this to be super stable.
Yep. And I also want to mention that he is not like tipping her fully off of her own feet. She still has a foot on the ground.
Yep. Her right foot is on the ground. And then, or no, her left foot is on the ground.
Her
and
left
her right
foot
is available to adjust and counterbalance her.
Yeah. And it's also helping for just an extra balance point for her for when she comes back up.
And then I just want to highlight that this is one of those situations where you do unfortunately have to like make contact with the neck itself, not just the base of the neck. And so this is the kind of thing that you do with a trusted partner, and you practice it to make sure it feels safe and comfortable for both partners.
Yeah. But I also want to point out that his thumb is not like wrapped around her neck. It's still mostly on her back.
Yeah. He's trying to distribute the weight into her back as much as possible, even though some of his hand is on her neck. And then her right hand is on his upper arm in case she needs a little extra bit of support.
Yep.
I too would look like that smug after surviving that. Yay. And this is a callback to poses they have made earlier in the routine. So yet another callback. And here's yet another callback. But this time, unlike the very first Around the World earlier in the routine, there's so much more range of motion in this one. And also, Robert's face is a little scary in slow motion. Oh, no.
A little bit.
I both love it and I'm terrified.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So that's like the simplest thing. They're literally doing the same piece of movement, an Around the World dip, but with much more range of motion, and they're in it much longer, and coming out of it is a little bit snappier. And then here's another callback. Oh my goodness, it's so great.
Can we go back to the beginning of the Around the World?
Yeah.
So I just want to point out what they're both doing to protect Laureen's back here. So it's really important that there is not a dramatic snap back, like she's not bending back with this snap. The snap is going to the side first, and then she's relaxing back. That's extremely important to protect her back.
Yep. And she's not just moving backwards after that side motion. Her knees are bending forward past Robert's center. And this is the part that gets missed a lot when I see people try to lead big Around the World dips. You need your knees to be past each other like this to share a center, and for the leader to counterbalance the follow enough. Because essentially you're asking the follow to be Neo from the Matrix. Yes, I use this metaphor all the freaking time. I'm not apologizing, especially since Matrix 4 is coming out this month. Anyway, this detail is so important. Because if Laureen were like out here in front and Robert were here behind, like all of the weight would be going this way and it would be imminent death.
Yeah. Yep. What I've seen recently, even at a little bit higher levels, is follows trying to make all of this happen with just their back.
Yeah.
Right? So they're really trying to achieve that arc back, but like they're not sending the hips and knees forward. So they're like trying to hold their own weight with their lower body while simultaneously getting into that big dip by arcing the back. That's really unhealthy for your back. Don't do that.
Yeah. And you can see, like, really, she's not arcing her back very much. It's like almost a straight line, and then her head's gently tipped back.
I don't think she has, I don't think she has a really wide range of motion in her back. Melissa doesn't either. So she's compensating that. But this is still the correct technique, even if you can do that with your back.
Yeah. Yeah, the only difference would be that if she had more mobility in her spine, Robert's arms wouldn't be bent as much. They would be extended down towards the floor a little bit more. But that counterbalance part, it's like, I think follows are doing that because leaders have not been trained how to actually counterbalance and around the world it properly. It's like this horrendous chicken or the egg that is just spawning mutant, dangerous, weird looking patterns.
Yeah. So if you look at Laureen, she has her weight over her right foot for this whole thing, basically, and the left foot is kind of there to adjust as she moves.
And then the other thing at the very end, they're coming straight up. There's no left to right bending in her spine.
Yeah.
It's not a circular motion. It's just straight up. So it's easier on her back.
Yeah. Really, really hard for your back to go all the way around.
Yeah.
It's more of an illusion.
Yeah.
Or at least it should be.
Yes.
It's one of those things that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. I say that rather frequently. This one is more so for your long-term back health.
Yes. Would you rather do a few extreme things in your early years, or do you want to keep dancing until you're old and crotchety? I want to keep dancing until I'm old and crotchety. That's my goal. At that point, Nerdy West Coast Swing will be us analyzing our old episodes. And probably being embarrassed and horrified, maybe. I don't know.
So this thing, I think this is the thing that I really want to talk about. All right. Fun. So it's almost like a callback to the Around the World thing that they just did with the dip, because they're going kind of around the world again. The important thing here is for Robert to make sure that he absorbs properly and that they're in the correct position for him to then rebound it back up.
And because they're coming into it from a rotational momentum, because Laureen is turning, having that kind of scoop at the bottom, so it's not straight down, straight up, this little scoop is helping that redirect a lot. So it's easier for both of them.
Yeah. I also want to add in that particular technique where, like, as a lead, you want to make sure you absorb, redirect, and rebound it back up is also important for certain split situations, like when a follow goes into a split. Super, super important. Whenever you have a follow that's just kind of dropping their weight in a controlled manner, it's really important as a lead for you to be able to absorb increasingly and then redirect it and rebound it back up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't just let it drop straight down.
Yep.
And if you do that, it's much harder to get back up.
Yeah.
Got to keep the momentum going.
I once was in a formation team that had a similar kind of drop dip like this. And there was one night where that was the main thing we were doing. Like,
Fun.
but we were having to do it full out. We weren't marking it because you see where I'm going with this. Because we wanted to make sure that our partners, like the partnerships, were working well to actually take the weight, and we were practicing with it and everything.
Yeah.
But like, oh man, I forget which leg was my standing leg for it, but like that quadricep for the next week, I was so asymmetrical. It's like I'd gone bowling or something. It was so bizarre. I had the weirdest limp. It was great.
That's really funny. Last thing I wanted to point out with
wait, I'm gonna save this because this is thumbnail material right here. Please hold.
Go right ahead.
Because that's gorgeous. Save. All right, have at
it. So with that dip, the last thing that I want to talk about is you can really tell how much momentum there is going back up, because when Laureen is coming up, like she has her feet on the ground, but she is kind of popped up so that she basically, her feet are kind of like not really on the ground. Like there's so much momentum upwards that she's able to then pull her feet in under her and not have them on the ground at all.
Yeah.
If there is any kind of momentum downwards in that moment, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important for leads to make sure to rebound that back up.
Yep.
And not just like, how do I explain it? Not just like move it around. You actually have to absorb and rebound. Did that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I think where that can sometimes get confusing is the use of the word absorb, because I think people may understand that in their head, but functionally they end up dissolving the connection, not absorbing. Yeah. So dissolving is where either the momentum comes to a stop, or the weight in the connection goes to zero. Either it's no longer positive, it's no longer negative, it goes to zero. That's dissolving. Absorbing actually means increasing the connection. So, and when it's a compression, it means there's more compression. There is more strength to resist that compression. When it's tension, same thing. But like, absorbing means increased connection, not dissolved connection.
Yeah.
Be the bungee cord. Yes. Yes. One with the bungee. I love this moment because, like, yes, the choreography has been escalating this whole time, but every once in a while they bring it into a little bit more of an intimate moment too. And it's just such a lovely addition to the choreography.
Yeah, and it's nice because especially Laureen like brings it in the middle of the two of them first, and then rolls it forward to the audience. Robert's a little bit more towards the audience initially than she is, but neither of them are just like straight up to the audience.
And this is the end, right?
Next week.
Yeah, we're doing it's Yakub and Emmeline that we're analyzing, right?
I think so.
Next week, yeah. So we're going to be analyzing another Yakub and Emmeline video, a West Coast Swing Fusion demo that they put recently on their YouTube channel. Lovely dance. So that's going to be fun. And then the week after that, we're going to be analyzing Austin Coyce and Chelsea Palmer's first place dance from Swingtacular 2019. Ye olden pre-pandemic times.
And we don't talk about All-Stars that much.
And then we'll be taking a break for the holidays and be back sometime in January That is the plan, and hopefully I will have my new laptop sooner rather than later, maybe even by next Thursday. Fingers crossed, everyone. Knock on wood, because the Zoom, there is not enough resources available thing is annoying all of us. Probably me more than you. And you're probably more annoyed by me being annoyed by it. But hey,
Okay,
our problems will be solved. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
And hopefully we'll have some exciting news on a next guest soon.
Yes. Yes, that is in the works. You know who you are. in case they see it. That'd be funny. All right, I'm gonna awkwardly stop the recording now.
Hello.
Do we have a visitor?
Yes.
I have a cameo appearance. So cute.
Coco. She just burst through the door.
As she should. I would too if I was that cute. I'd burst through every door. Was that Coco?
Yeah.
That was adorable. Oh, this low system resources box. You will die soon. I ordered a new laptop. Hasn't shipped yet. Hopefully soon. Oh, hey, chat. Does my chat button work? Yes, I can see the chat now, y'all. But question, do you now have a weird gray box on your screen? God damn it, Zoom. I mean, you could one job.
Shift it.
I could.
On the way.
I just wanted to, make sure. I'll put it over here. Can I make it narrower? Yes, I can. I may or may not be in love with my stream deck. I know there are low system resources. Sometimes if my mental health is really bad, I dread editing these episodes. But then usually I start editing and I'm like, hey, we were smart. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. But the anticipation, like on a Friday morning, building up to me opening my editing software, I'm just like, oh no, was this the one time where I was way too dumb and I should pretend the file died?
Funny, not funny.